Well, I'm so excited, Toni, to welcome you to the Core Connections podcast. I know, you are a registered dietitian, and so I'm excited to hear about your journey and what led you really to help women, to not diet. I mean, when I started way back in college, I was double majoring in exercise science and dietetics, and so I'm very familiar with what the education is behind dietetics. I actually
Mhm.
decided to drop it, and you probably understand and see that perspective too, right? So yeah, so would you just share with all of us so everyone gets to know you a little bit better, and what led you to here with your career and everything that you do?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Um, the road to where I'm at today is a long one, but I'll give you guys the short version of the story. So basically, I grew up overweight and insecure about my body, and it was pointed out to me pretty early on that I was overweight. Kids teased me for my weight. I'd get side glances at the dinner table from family members, and I was even told things directly, like if I didn't lose any weight, I'd never find a boyfriend. So stuff like that like really sits with you. um Comments started as young as, like, from what I remember getting looks, but like the comments I remember more like, and me really internalizing it, before the age of 9. But I think 9, when I was 9, that's when like really things shifted for me. I started to, I talk about this in a book that I'm currently writing that's coming out later this year, and it was basically like I loved doing, dancing. I love dancing. It was like my form of movement that I really enjoyed. And there was a shift in me at that point where it became more about, the dancing was no longer fun. It was like, I have to work out harder. I have to do this. I was doing like Barbie's dance workout, literally, not kidding. Like, you should YouTube it. It's actually hysterical. But it's like, if you grew up in the 90s, you might have done Barbie's dance workout too. And so I would do it like on repeat. And like I was 9 then, right? And I was always very active. I was an athlete growing up. And so I had associated my weight as the reason why I wasn't on varsity as a freshman, which was a goal of mine. And so that led to some really restrictive eating behaviors. There was days where, I would only eat an orange for the day, but then I'd wonder why I was like burnt out by hour 1 of tryouts, and then I'd come home and exercise more after working out for 2 to 3 hours. It was really like vicious and tumultuous and very unhealthy. And ironically, I was trying to get healthier. But anyways, so that led to like really like unhealthy eating behaviors and patterns. And I really wanted to learn how to eat, how to fuel my body the proper way. So I went to school to become a dietitian. And it took a lot of lessons in between to help me realize that it wasn't restriction that was the answer. That's actually part of the problem. Like, I really needed to focus on how food was going to make me feel instead of on how it was going to make me look, if I really wanted to find balance in my eating habits. And that's truly what I did. And when I did that, I noticed I had more energy, more self-confidence, my body image improved. And I really stopped looking at food as good or bad and really just started to, look at it as, wow, this helps support my movement. This helps to support my energy, my focus. I had all of these dreams and goals, and I was always very good in school. And I noticed that when I ate more, my brain worked better. And just like, I started to look at it for how it can help me rather than it was like looking at food as the enemy. And that is why I do what I do today. So becoming a dietitian was the very first step for me to realize that like other people are struggling too. And they don't need to struggle like I did trying to figure it out on my own for years. So what I do now is I actually help people. I teach women mostly. I work with men too, but mostly women, how not to diet. Because I think the word diet just leads to a lot more restriction, um, and disappointment and frustration. And everyone spends their whole life trying to fit into something when really they are unique and they need to figure out what works best for them. And rather than being on a diet, kind of create your own, meaning just the foods that you eat, not always being on a diet.
I love that you talked about the restriction piece of it, and I'd love to go there first,
Sure.
and more honestly, like the mindset.
Yeah.
piece behind that, right? Because that's really at the end of the day what a lot of this is. So with restriction, right, that's what the word diet really means. I feel like, as I'm with you, I don't use the word diet hardly ever. I like to talk about our food and our
Mhm.
nutrition, because there is just like this restrictive feeling around that word diet. So what helped to shift your thought process, really, from, oh my gosh, I was not eating near enough and I was not feeling good and I was over exercising, right? Which is like
Mhm.
a double whammy,
Mhm.
to recognizing like, oh, food is like my friend, and
Mhm.
it should be what's really fueling me to be a better athlete and be kind to my body.
Yeah. Well, so I would say the first thing that I recognized was, if you think about the long term of that, it was very exhausting, very draining. It led to me overeat and binge, and it was a very vicious cycle. And I was obsessed with food. I was like always thinking about it. And I think just I had recognized, I started to pay attention to like, this can't be it. Like this can't be. And if it is it, like, and I wasn't losing any weight, but say I did lose some weight, I would be miserable. Like there has to be a better way. Right. So I think you're right. When people think of the word diet, they think of restriction and they think about, what do I need to take out? Right. What do I need to remove? So what I teach my clients and how I change things in my life was I started to focus on, what can I add in? Can I drink more water, eat more fruits and vegetables, have more sleep, like, because I was like never sleeping, and like thinking about things even outside of food that play a really big role in, how you are and how you behave and like the goals and stuff. And it's so much more than just your food. So I think if we focus on what we can add in, it's gonna be less kind of, we play with that, and also that all or nothing mindset, like we have to go all in. I realize like this is my life. I want to be happy and healthy the rest of my life. So if I keep doing this all in process, I'm going to keep feeling burnt out and then going into that screw it mindset. And if I realize like this is my life and I want to feel good on a daily basis, not temporarily, then I got to find a middle ground here, rather than trying so hard and then giving up and then feeling how you had to start over. I think you could probably agree, a lot of people think like, oh, I'll start over on Monday, or I'll start over the first of the month, or I'll start over after the holidays, or I'll start over in the summer, or it's just like constantly, or after my birthday. It's just like constantly waiting. And it's like, what are you waiting for? Time, flies. This is your life. And hopefully if you only get one body. So we do want to care for it, right? But it's finding ways to care for it that are not super rigid and, harsh and mean. And, our bodies are amazing. They do so many incredible things for us. It's just like so great. So we want to take care of them because they're there for us, and we're in it. We can't not be in it. This is our bodies.
Oh, absolutely. So well said, Toni. So I want to go a little bit deeper in the, this all or none mentality, because I cannot tell you how often that
Mhm.
comes up in
Yeah.
conversations that I have, specifically, like I talk more about the core and exercise and all that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about that with our food, because, this waiting till Monday, all that stuff that you were saying, like, so
Mhm.
what's an actionable either item or even and or the thought process to be like, the more we keep putting it off and putting it off, the longer we're holding ourselves back from really being our best thriving self,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think that like anything, if you want to be successful in anything, if you read books about, financial success or career success, or even like, building a healthy relationship, it really comes down to the little things, right? It really comes down to what you do every day. The person that takes you out to dinner once a year, it's not enough, right? You need someone who's like, thinks about you and opens the, it's a little old fashioned, so they open the doors for you, but like, like helps take out the garbage, tells you they love you on a regular basis. It's not like the one time thing that like it's going to make or break the relationship, right? It's the day-to-day stuff. So in regards to the all or nothing mindset, I think it's two parts where we're kind of getting at, which is one, I think people have this fear of failure. So they push it off, push it off, push it off, push it off. And then two, I think it is definitely kind of their perception of what they think being healthy is. And they think it's putting in max amount of effort, right? And they, but really it's just putting in little efforts every day. I wish I could show you guys like a pictorial image, because it's so powerful when I go in, like do in-person workshops or virtual workshops, and I have a graph, and I'm going to try to depict it for you guys. And I think you'll still understand it as you listen to the audio. But so most people, like the start of a new year, have this goal of losing weight, right? So they start out pretty strong, but unfortunately they choose things that are super restrictive. Maybe they cut out, everyone does it differently. There's so many different ways in which they can do it. So it's just often very far off from their current eating style, right? So maybe they're eating lots of takeout, processed foods, fast foods, and now they're going to say no fast foods, no processed foods, like none of that. And it's just like very extreme, right? Or they're doing like a no carb diet, or, a juice cleanse, or just these things that, yeah, you'll lose a ton of weight at first, but we all know what happens when you stop it. You gain it right back and some. And so what most people do is they start out with this crazy, diet that, works. And I'm using air quotes. Then, because if it worked, you wouldn't have to try it again, right? And you're not a failure. They're not meant for you to work. They're called fad diets for a reason. Fad is temporary, right? But this perception is, oh, I screwed up. Now I either have to try it again or try another one, right? So they jump to another diet. And it's the same diet. There's just like a different level of restriction, right? This one restricts carbs and this one restricts protein, or this one restricts fat, or this one restricts, it's all the same, but just like a different level of restriction, right? So they go from one and the other. And so then each time they do that, they initially lose some weight, but then the diet itself is not sustainable. And then they gain it back. And then they stay on that cycle every couple of months, right? Throughout, from the beginning of the year all the way to the end of the year. If we were going to look at a graph of their weight, we would see lots of ups and downs. But at the end, what we usually see is either no weight loss at all. So wherever they started at the end of the year, they're the same. Or we even most of the time see it even up. So now they have even more weight to lose, because 80 to 95% of diets, those who lose weight on them usually gain them within the first 1 to 5 years back and some, right? So these diets, because they're not sustainable, and our bodies are not meant to lose weight. It's only really, really like I don't know what the word is, but like only frequently that we live in a world where we can get a lot of access to food. But if you think about our ancestors, they had to look and hunt and gather for food. It wasn't easily accessible for them. So if they had it, their body would store it, and it helps keep them safe. So we're mammals, we're animals. We're not meant to lose weight. It's not what our bodies want to do. So every time you go on a diet, your body fights you and makes your and slows down your metabolism to compensate for that, because it doesn't want to lose any more weight, and it feels threatened because of the extreme way. If you do weight loss in a more sustainable way, it's going to work with you. Chances are, if you are, overweight for your body size, it's going to come down. Now, the way that it comes down, or how it comes down, and what it comes down to, unfortunately, you can't control it as much as you would like to, but it will probably go to the weight that it feels most comfortable and safe at. So all that to say, if we were to look at that graph, the numbers, the levels would be up and down, up and down, up and down. At the end of the year, you'd be almost like no progress, or you'd go up. But if we think about, sustainable ways to weight loss, and really just focus on our habits and behaviors, and instead of going on a crazy diet in the beginning of the year, and you really just focus on, okay, I'm going to, go for more walks. I'm going to get more sleep. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to eat more vegetables. I'm going to choose more lean proteins. I'm going to be mindful of my hunger. And obviously you're not doing all that in month one, but like each week or so, you're kind of building off of that. You're still going to have weight fluctuations. That's normal, but it's not going to be as drastic. And chances are by the end of the year, you would have lost maybe, everyone's different, but like say 10 to 15 pounds, right? And people think like, oh my God, that only 10 to 15 pounds in an entire year. Well, 10 to 15 pounds in a year is better than having to lose now another 5 every year after that. right? At least we're going down if that's a goal for you, right? So I like for people to, if they can see that visualization, they can really understand and really and get it, that what they're doing really isn't going to work. It doesn't work. It never will. And instead focus on what are some small changes I can make? What are the little things I can do to make, some progress. Some progress is better than no progress.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yes. And I could not agree with you more wholeheartedly. It is those baby steps, those tiny habits, and it's one thing at a time. And it's crazy how our brain has a really hard time, not for everybody, but I would say a majority of people. I've been working with clients for, 20 years pretty much. And I've seen it over and over again. It's like everyone wants to do these drastic changes because they think it's like that's the magic that's going to finally get her to the results, when ultimately I loved your explanation. It's like, plus what that does too, right? And feel free to add into all of this, is the stress that it does on your body, right? And you mentioned metabolism, which is huge, but I also see that underlying stress that your body's going through because you're putting the pressure on yourself to, oh my gosh, I can't have that. And every time you do that, right? Like it's going to elicit a stress response in your body. And ultimately, like I love talking about stress and how it is such a root of so much in the body.
Everything.
It's all intertwined and connected.
Yes.
But yeah, when we're doing these restrictive things that are ultimately causing you more stress, it's like, sometimes just go eat that junk food, even though like it's not great for you, but don't stress about it. And then we move on with our life. And I would love to have you, like, what is your thought process around, say, the junk food, the eating out, right? Because for a lot of people, that's just a part of their life. And they don't want to fully cut it out, right? Because we don't want to be fully restrictive, but like, how can we keep the not so good, air quotes, things in our life, right?
Less healthy, right? Okay. So I like to use this example, right? When someone chooses to eat, and I don't want to put like labels on food, right? Because everyone's different, but like say, ice cream, cookies, cheeseburgers, French fries, pizza, those things that you're like, and you're like, in your mind, they're quote unquote bad or junk or not good. I like to say, like when we're eating a cookie, it's clear we're not eating it for the nutritional value, right? You're not eating a cookie to get vitamin C and antioxidants and fiber. Like that's not why you're eating a cookie. You're eating the cookie to enjoy it, to have pleasure, right? And that's okay. Even the society makes you feel like it's not. It's okay. Food is a pleasurable thing. We want you to enjoy your food, right? The issue becomes, because of the mindset, I'm not allowed to have it, and then you choose to have it, you feel like, oh, I have to have all of it right now because I'm not allowed to have it, which means tomorrow I'm not having any cookies. It becomes that scarcity mindset, right? Then you overconsume on them to the point where you feel sick, which leads to guilt, which then leads to restriction. And that's how you stay stuck in the diet cycle. So what I like to tell people is that if you're choosing to eat a food for the enjoyment of it, not for the nutritional value, that's okay. Because if we're truly defining health, health is not just your physical health. Health is also your mental health, right? So if your road to being the healthiest version of you is sacrificing your mental health, and you're feeling stressed, deprived, anxious, stressed, all the things, then it's important that we think about how can I incorporate these foods that I love and I enjoy without feeling sick and with limiting that food guilt associated with it. So then it becomes really focusing, like I said in the beginning, if you're focusing on how you want to feel versus how you want to look, you're not just focusing on how you want to feel now, right? In the moment now, you're always going to want all the cookies, right? You're going to want to have the pint of ice cream. Like you're going to want all of it because it's delicious. It tastes good, right? It lights up our, hormones and our brain and everything. It really just like sends off all these neurotransmitters that are like, oh yes, yum, I want more of that. I want more of that, right? So in the moment, you're going to want more. But if you focus on how you want to feel both now and later, you're going to remember that when you overeat on those foods, it doesn't feel good. And you don't like feeling stuffed and bloated and fatigued and tired and just like with the stomach ache and nauseous and a headache. Like it comes from overeating that much to the point, like past fullness, it doesn't feel good, right? So you have to really just ask yourself, like, how can I fit this into my eating style without feeling sick? with feeling like I enjoyed it. But I didn't feel deprived, right? Because if you don't have any of it, that deprivation leads to increased cravings, which leads to eventually, that binging or that screw it mindset. Right. So, but also, having too much of it doesn't feel good. So it's asking yourself, how much can I incorporate that feels good to me? Right. And that answer is different for everybody. Right. Everyone's different. Like if you're not really maybe into sweets, maybe you like, fried food. So that's where you're kind of playing with that. Or some people who want to drink, who drink alcohol. It's like, how much can it fit before it's too much? So really just ask yourself that question. I think people struggle because it goes back to the all or nothing mindset or that black and white thinking. People think they want to be told what to do. And so it's like, eat this, don't eat that, because it creates clarity in their mind. But the reality is that we're adults. Nobody wants to be told what to do, right? So I like to teach people what to do, but that process, like, when you're learning something, it's not so easy. It's not so straightforward. And it really does require you to take a minute, pause, reflect. Literally less than a minute though. Like it sounds like a lot, but all you really need to do is just check in. What am I craving? Why am I craving this? How much can I have to feel satisfied without feeling stuffed? Like those are the questions you need to ask yourselves. And it's going to be different depending on the day. If you're a woman, where you're at in your cycle, it's going to be dependent on, if you're under a lot of stress, if you ate a lot that day, if you didn't eat a lot that day. Like there's so many factors that are going to come into play, but only you really know that honest answer. And you just have to get really good at continuously taking a moment, checking in and asking yourself, how do I want to feel?
I love that perspective, because the feeling at the end of the day, like, don't we all just want to feel good and energized?
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah.
that's the number one thing I hear from my ladies is they're like, I'm tired all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, they're also probably taking care of everybody but themselves. So that's
Yeah.
also why they're probably tired, but properly nourishing your body will definitely help with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if we're truly committing to a healthier lifestyle and just overall just improving our wellness, then hopefully that also means more boundary setting. That means more communication, that means more time for you. It's so cliche, but it's really true. Like you have to fill your cup first. It has to be not even just fill to the top. It has to be overflowing, because if it's not overflowing, you eventually will burn out. So it has to be like, fill your cup so much, then you give to others, and then they give back. And then it's just like reciprocal.
Oh, it's just an amazing, when you can get there, it's amazing energy exchange that happens within your life. Yeah,
Yes.
it really does.
It's powerful.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned, eating can be different around our cycles. And I always know this is such a fun conversation. So what is your advice? Because women are always like, oh my gosh, I'm always just bloated, right? Because I do a lot of like teaching women how to strengthen their core. And they're like, Erica, I'm always just bloated, right? It kind of doesn't matter what it seems like they eat. But I know for many women, we tend to get those cravings, leading up to period starting, and even in those first couple of days. So I guess, what are some tips or advice that you have for women as, in that, literally period of cycle, right?
Yeah. Well, I think first thing you need to know is that your metabolism does pick up a little bit to support the menstruation process. So your hunger and your cravings around that time are legitimately a biological process that's happening. So very similar to if someone is pregnant or breastfeeding, that doesn't mean they need like a whole other day's worth of food, but they'll probably need upwards to like another meal or so, right? So I don't want to go into calories so much, but just like they're going to need a little bit more food. So I think that our issue is we think that we're supposed to be a certain amount of hungry every day, or that we're supposed to like eat a certain amount the same every day. And that's just not true. Our hunger varies day to day based off of number of factors. And I think if you're hungrier that day, that's okay. So I think we first need to understand that you have permission to eat. And the more you fight against that, you're going to unfortunately, it's just going to continue. You're going to stay stuck in that vicious cycle. And our bodies are incredible at creating balance and equilibrium. So, listen to it, pay attention to it, because it's only going to help you. But with that said, if you feel like you tend to overconsume, it's like okay, yeah, no, I eat. Or maybe you're like, no, I definitely eat, but I probably eat too much. So then listen, so here's what I want to tell you, a couple things. One, I would say when anybody has a craving, I like to give them this exercise because I think it's super helpful, because unfortunately what happens is we either deny our craving or we don't really listen to it, or we try to have like the healthier option or whatever it is. And then we have like all the things before we actually get to the thing that we wanted in the first place. And that's how we end up overeating. So I think the next time, if anyone is having a craving, whether you're menstruating or not, or PMSing or anything, is to really just take that moment and ask yourself, like, what is it that I'm craving? Do you want something hot or cold? Do you want something crunchy or smooth? Do you want something salty or sweet? Are you craving a carbohydrate? Are you craving a fat, a protein, spicy, bland? Like, go through all the different characteristics of food and textures and really get a clear understanding of what it is that you want. And it could be two answers, right? It could be salty and sweet. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be one or the other, but it's great to think, okay, salty and sweet. It could be an apple with salty peanut butter, right? If you want crunch, right? But maybe you want something smooth. So maybe it's a yogurt with, maybe you want something sweet and strawberries on top, right? Like, whatever it is, that will help you to kind of figure it out, so you don't end up eating all these other things that you didn't actually want to eventually get to the thing that you did want. So I think that could be a helpful tip for anybody.
Yeah, I love that. That's good to just, we get so busy, go, 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 right? And we just kind of go to
Well,
the
yeah,
first thing,
yeah,
or like, and so I think just that, like, actually take a moment to really reflect on what
yeah,
it is you do want. I mean, and it doesn't
yeah.
have to take that long.
Yeah. And I also think, going off of that, being busy all day long, a lot of people will say they're not hungry. But chances are they're probably just stressed out or anxious or busy or distracted. So they're not in touch or listening to their hunger. So I think that if you could create a little bit like small pockets throughout the day where you just close your eyes, take 3 big deep breaths. Could be when you're sitting on the toilet, honestly, because that's probably when most women actually have a moment to themselves. Like, just get on the toilet, like, you know what I mean? When you're sitting on the toilet, like, take 3 deep breaths and just like relax yourself for a second, and then get back to what you want to do, just to kind of help to ground you a little bit throughout like the chaotic parts of the day. And if you can, also, what I think a lot of people, I talk about this a lot, there's the difference between physical hunger and psychological hunger. And most people, especially women, they tend to fall in what I call the danger zone. So if you think of a Venn diagram, they overlap. That danger zone is when you're like so stressed out emotionally, all the things, and you're also not eating enough during the day. So you like physically are hungry and like you're emotionally like drained. And then they come together. And then eventually, when your like day slows down, it's like 8, 9 o'clock at night. That's when like, all the eating happens. And it's like, you have legitimate cravings and you have legitimate hunger. But my guess is that maybe if we had created some space during the day to fuel your body and nourish your body, probably would be less likely to feel like this need and this like almost this out of control feeling at nighttime.
Yeah, I think that's a really important awareness. I think as busy women, busy moms, because I hear a lot
Mm-hmm.
of moms, especially when your kiddos are like toddlers, are like, I'm, didn't have time to make myself lunch, but I'm like eating off of their plate, which of course,
Yes.
if you're giving them, a good, healthy, meal, I'm like, that's fine. So maybe that needs to be shifted a little bit. But I don't know. And I would love you to go into this too. But like, as far as, busy women, busy moms, and like, oh gosh, I just totally forgot to eat lunch. Or I've been there,
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been there myself. Or you're so focused on everybody else or your job, kids, whatever that you can just sometimes almost forget to eat.
Yeah.
So how is it like, do you have some quick, easy, like, I think lunch is the hardest, right? I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but you see that lunch tends to be the hardest. Like, women can
Yeah.
maybe eat the breakfast before they head off to work, get the kids to school, whatever it is. And then you just get all the things you got to do during the day. And then, like you said, all of a sudden at night, you're like, oh my gosh, you sit down for dinner, hopefully not at 9 o'clock for too many people, but I know that happens, right? And you're
Yeah.
just like, oh my gosh, I'm starving. And then, we all know we don't want to eat too close to bed because we want
Mm-hmm.
our body to really be able to recover and heal at night. So that
Mm-hmm.
sleep, like you've
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, is so, so important.
Yeah. So, everyone's different, but I would say it all comes down to your habits, right? So it's going to take time, but I would say for some people, you might want to, if you have a morning routine, or if you don't, I would definitely work on creating one, because it doesn't need to be extravagant, but just waking up before your kids get up and just having like 20 to 30 minutes to yourself to really think about like your day ahead and what you want to accomplish, and not having a to-do list that's 5 pages long, but literally like, what are the top 2 priorities I want to get done today? That would be super helpful. And then with that, I would just review like looking at your calendar, looking at your schedule, like what time is lunch today? And just like you put in your kids' appointments, just like you put in your business meetings, just like you put in, other people's appointments, put in lunch, schedule it out. A lot of people don't even put it on their calendar. And so then someone at work like books a meeting for them. And it's like, no, like you're busy at that time. You have to eat lunch. You need to recharge, because you need that moment, not only to fuel yourself and nourish your body, but also to just like step away from your desk, for a minute and just like recharge for the second half of the day. I think a lot of women, and I know I was like this for sure, we kind of just like don't want to stop because we just like want to get all these things done. But one thing that I learned a few years ago that's been super helpful, and I started practicing it and seen a huge difference, is I think you probably have heard it too, but you have to slow down to speed up. Like if you really want to accomplish things, you have to take it easy, because like we talked about all the way in the beginning, this all or nothing mindset, you will burn out. Chances are you're probably, especially with the pandemic last year, like I know a lot of moms are on that verge of always like a constant verge of burnout. And I think it's important for you to recognize that if you're not intentional about slowing down, you're just going to stay stuck there. And if you truly want to accomplish all that you want to accomplish, like it might not happen all in one day, but the week will be a lot more productive than, your day to day.
So what advice do you have then for women who are like, I don't have any time at all to slow down? Like they just can't like grasp that idea of like my to-do list is a mile long, and I've got all these things, and they're like, I can't slow down right now. Like I'll slow down, whatever in the future. And it's like, well, but it needs to start today. And it doesn't, again, it's like the little pieces, right? It doesn't have to be like a 180 shift, but something, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that if they were really being honest with themselves, there's a fear. I think there's a fear there.
Oh, I love
probably a fear of lack of control. There's a fear of like not knowing what that feels like. I know any moment I used to have of like solitude, it was very uncomfortable for me. It's probably when I emotionally ate the most, back, a few years ago, but it was really the times where like the loneliness would creep in. It was times where like all these feelings would come up that I never dealt with from my childhood. It was times where I like felt my feelings, but didn't want to feel my feelings because they were uncomfortable, so there's probably a lot there. It's unknown. So I think, and also too, I think it could be many things. Some people, I think for me, I was always an overachiever because, I was overweight. So no one valued me for my looks, right? My body. But my value was in like, oh my God, she gets straight A's. She, even though I didn't make varsity as a freshman, I made it as a sophomore. So I was like, oh, she's like, a really good athlete, like, all these things. Like it was always, I felt like I needed to. There was like no room for error elsewhere. Right. And so I felt like I always needed to be doing something in order for me to like prove myself to other people. So I feel like a lot of women probably have a similar story like that, not the same. But it often goes a lot deeper than just like not having the time.
Yeah, because in that time, that space starts to show up in your life and you fill it instantly with something else, whether it's food or busyness or thinking you have to do all the things. Exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it is the just slowing down in life, slowing down when we eat our food, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure you can talk to that, about what the power of slowing down can do for your body. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah.
Like,
So
share
much
all
so.
the benefits of eating
So
slower.
much better. Going back to what you mentioned earlier about the bloat. I mean, bloat can be, just from PMS, right? But bloat could just be your body is just having trouble digesting your food because you're eating it so quickly, right? So if you have digestive issues, it probably your gut needs to rest a little bit, or it needs to be able to, you have to kind of slow down your eating process. That could be beneficial. But more importantly than that, what I teach people, if I'm not teaching them what to diet, what am I teaching them? I'm teaching them to be more mindful, right? So what often happens with the dietitians who work with our clients is they are experiencing more mindfulness in their eating patterns, but they're also then experiencing more mindfulness in their life and how they feel, and that their situations and their relationships and their jobs and all the things. And so it starts with food, but it goes so much beyond that. But one thing to help with kind of slowing down your eating, I think first you have to create the space and time, right? Because if you never, create the space and time, you're going to be shoveling food and going there, whatever. But even say you're eating on the go, right? Even if it's a smoothie, so it's not even like solid food, there are ways that you can still kind of slow down that process. And so just like, I don't know if anyone who's listening is familiar with just being mindful in when you're kind of having anxiety or stress, you're told to, therapists will often advise you to check in with your five senses, right? Look for color, smell what's around you, taste if you're eating, taste your food, stuff like that. So when it comes to food, I recommend, if you want to practice being more mindful and you're having trouble slowing down, go through those five senses, right? So look at it. What does it look like? What colors do you see? What textures do you see? Smell it. What does it smell like? It smells fruity and delicious. If it's a smoothie, it doesn't have a smell. It smells like, hopefully not, but fish is great for you, but not the best, most pleasant smell, right? So it's like, what does it smell like? What does it taste like? Really taste it. Slow your chewing down. Really taste it. What does it feel like going down your throat? And then what do you hear? Is there a crunch? It could be, if the food doesn't make any noise, it could be like what's going on around you, but it really just helps to kind of slow that process down, and then helps you to be more mindful. And you could almost consider that like a meditation practice, when really you're not, maybe if you're struggling with meditation, you could start with something that you do every day, which is hopefully eating.
Such good advice. I love it. And I feel like when we can do that, it's just going to help to have a positive effect on that underlying stress that I know
Yeah.
so many women have. And you got to start somewhere, right? You just have to start. And I always tell everyone listening, I'm like, pick one thing,
Just
one
one.
thing from every episode you listen to, and just one thing, one little thing. Come back and listen again in the future, and then pick that second thing, because that's ultimately it, right? Not overwhelming ourselves, and just like
Yeah.
one thing is going to be moving you in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, within our practice, so I have two dietitians on my team where they'll work with someone for a minimum 6 months, and they'll, start with on their first initial consultation, they'll have like a list of things that do really, truly, like we've identified together, need improvements on, right? But if we gave them the action items to do all of those things in the first week or the first month, like they would burn out, just like any other, program they've tried. So what we do is we always refer back to that, but we make sure that we talk with the client, and that together we identify what's that one thing that you're ready to get started on. What do you feel is what we call like the low hanging fruit, the thing that it's like the most easiest thing to accomplish. And we start with what's easy, where a lot of people start with what's hard. We start with what's easy, and then every week build off of that. So by the end of the 6 months, they've accomplished all these little things like every week, but in 6 months, it's a lot of stuff to be proud of. And it's what helps build their confidence, which helps build their momentum, because I think a lot of people are waiting for that motivation, but motivation comes and goes. We really need to be dependent on, the little things that we're doing to help build momentum to keep us going. And that's ultimately what we're doing. So we're taking one small thing, adding another small thing. We call it, I mean, we don't call it, it's called habit stacking. We didn't claim the term, but we utilize that method to help people, because at the end of the day, it's not even about what you know, it's about applying what you know, and knowing and learning and understanding what works best for you. And even after knowing that and following through with it, like, we are what we repeatedly do. We are people based off of our habitual routines. And so it needs to really stick. It really needs to be habits that are just like, yeah, you're always going to have to be mindful of it. Just like you still like wake up and like, oh, I need to like, but you kind of think you got to brush your teeth, but you're also just like, do it. Like there's like a moment it's like, I'm going to go brush my teeth, but it's like, so like, it's stuff like that. It's like, we try to get you to this place where when it comes to moving your body and drinking more water and cooking your food and buying your food and preparing your food and, all the other things that come with a healthy lifestyle, it really is like, yeah, you have to think about it, but you're no longer stressed. Like you can go to a restaurant, navigate it, enjoy it, and move on. It's no longer like this big fear or this big like, oh, I'll start over Monday. It's really just like every day you're just living a healthier life that it aligns with who you are and who you want to be.
I love that. So I do have a big question that's, around all this. And I know you work with mostly women, and that's who I mostly work with as well. So do you have advice for women when, they're committed and want to make these changes, but their spouse or partner is not really on the same page they are, at least not yet? Like, what advice or tips or anything to like help at least like get them started with them?
So it's hard to get somebody started when they don't want to, right?
Yeah.
So I always tell people that you just have to trust the process and just so there's two parts to it, right? So there's the one part of where a lot of women might blame their spouse for the reason why they can't make progress. And I think that we have to be really honest with ourselves, and that, their partner doesn't have to want to be, lose weight or get healthy, too. We want them to be supportive, but they don't have to have the same goals. Like at the end of the day, we're responsible for our choices. And would it be helpful if they were on board? Absolutely. But all that to say is that, they, at the end of the day, you're responsible for your choices. And I like people to get to this place where the more they love their decisions, they don't need anybody else to love them. So really just like understanding that this is what I need to do for me. Maybe they'll catch on eventually, maybe not. Either way, I'm happier and healthier here. So this is how I'm going to live my life. Now, I think that there's going to be times where your partner, your spouse doesn't get it or doesn't see it, but eventually they will. I have worked with many married women, and it's kind of crazy how most of them end up like, because they're also the ones doing the cooking and stuff like that, that their husband by default ends up eating a little bit healthier and like kind of picking up on their behaviors, and often ends up losing more weight than them, which is very frustrating for most of the women that I work with. But it's the truth. Like it's just easier for them. So that happens a lot, but that's also like, they never said anything or did anything. They just like, were cooking, more nutritious foods. So their husband was cooking more nutritious foods. They were, going into the gym more. So their husband's like, I may as well work out with you too. Like it's just like happened to be stuff like that. Obviously it doesn't always happen like that, but, you have to really just stick to it and trust the process. Yeah. And I would just say if they're like self-sabotaging you on purpose, that's like a deeper conversation, like, right. But if it's really just a matter of like, I have a partner that doesn't have the same goal as me, like you have to almost think of it as like, I'm sure that they have different goals than you as well, that you're supportive, but you don't need to partake in it as well.
Well, and like you just were explaining, it's like actions speak louder than words. So many times just you start those, one foot in front of the other, start making these small changes. And before you know it, they're along the journey with you. They might be a couple steps or several steps behind you, but they're moving in the same direction. Because when I work with women on, not necessarily nutrition, but just, they I see that all the time, but I do see that they they eventually like start to really catch on very like almost subconsciously.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think that, especially also if you have kids, so many parents want to tell their kids, to eat more fruits and vegetables and to, limit their snacks or whatever. But the kids are going to do what they see, not what you tell them to do. Your kids are going to pick up, if you're eating vegetables on your plate, eventually they might eat them too. But if you never put a veggie on your plate, they're never going to eat a veggie. Like, you can't expect that, right? So I think we're so hard trying to, once again, take care of everybody else and change their minds and all that. But like, you can only really control and change who you are and how you react and how you respond and what you do. And just trust that you're being a positive role model for them, and they'll see it.
Oh, absolutely. They totally do. Even though there can be moments of feeling like, oh my gosh, my kids are never going to eat these veggies. And
They will, though.
they
They
come
will.
around.
They
Yeah,
do. Yeah, they
they
come
do.
around. They
Yeah.
come around. You have to expose a child to a food. If a child says no to a food that you've exposed to them 27 times, then you can move on to another food. But even that one food, like, you have to present it. Like, say they don't like broccoli. Maybe they don't like broccoli if you only steam it, but maybe they like broccoli with garlic and oil. Maybe they don't like it with garlic and oil. Maybe they like it with marinara sauce. Maybe they like it chopped up in small, tiny pieces. Maybe they like rice broccoli. Maybe they like, you can't say that they don't like broccoli unless you've exposed them 27 times in 27 different ways every single time for like a few years.
Yeah, you just keep putting it in front of them and keep
put them in front of them. They
and...
can choose not to finish it or not to have it, but you still always put it on the plate. Don't make assumptions. They might not eat it today, but they'll eat it tomorrow. Why? Maybe they watched a YouTube video of some kid eating broccoli and now they want to eat broccoli like the kid they look up to. Because that's very common.
Yeah.
I don't have children, but my boyfriend has a 5-year-old. So she's basically, we're not married yet, but she's like a stepdaughter to me. She's been in my life. We've been together for 3 years. So, she's basically, I like grew up as like, I'm fortunate. I'm like the best friend, I'm like the stepmom best friend. So, but I've seen it with her. Like, she'll ask me like, can we make something with oranges? And I'll be like, yeah. And then later I find out that she watched something on YouTube where like this kid was using oranges. So it's, they want what they see, and if they look up to you, eventually they're going to catch on to that stuff too.
You will. So just that's why, again, prioritizing ourselves.
Yeah.
You're being such a good model for your kiddos and those
Definitely.
So just a little added reminder of that. So Toni, this has been such an amazing conversation. And I hope everyone, at least just gets one takeaway, even from today, moving you all in a healthier direction. So will you share with everyone where they can find out more about you and reach out to you if they have questions for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm very active on Instagram at tips_with_Toni with an I. You can go to my website, tipswithtoni.com. And on the very first homepage, you actually have a quiz about which Disney princess do you eat like. So it's a really fun quiz. It's aligned with the reason why I did it is because I did a TED Talk and I have a book coming out later this year called Once Upon a Diet. So there's more information there, but I think that it's important for you to kind of just know what your characteristics are to help to navigate you towards a way of eating that is more individualized to you rather than just kind of continuing to search outside yourself. So that's kind of a good place to start. So my website, and then if you're interested in coaching with one of my dietitians, you can learn more about that on the coaching tab. So tipswithtoni.com/coaching.
Amazing. I love all the work that you are doing, Toni. So
thank you so much.
So much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.